Hines.
Here.
Clem Wozleski. Mike Richmond.
Here.
Jim Galantino. Commissioner Talvey. Margaret Gubernalti. Mike Cristaldi.
Here.
Craig Palmisano. David Carter. Despina Hess. Remy Pelosi. Joe DiGirolamo.
Despina Hess is here.
And Rich Patterson.
Say Despina Hess again.
Despina Hess? Here.
Notice thereof and pursuant to the New Jersey State Sunshine Law, notice of this meeting was advertised in the press and a copy of same has been posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building. All applicants are hereby advised that should you receive board approval tonight, you must come forward and sign a form which informs you regarding the timing of receiving building permits and mercantile licenses. At the end of your case tonight, please see the board administrator to sign the two information sheets. Approval of resolutions and decisions. Number 10-2015, Sea Grape Properties.
I'll make that motion.
So in the second.
Wait a minute. Maybe you shouldn't make the motion.
No, he can't make the motion.
Yeah.
You're not allowed to vote on it.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Craig, you made the motion. Can I have a second? Do I want you to make the motion,
Make
please?
the motion.
Someone second?
I'll second it.
Okay.
Roll call or?
We did that. Okay. Okay, we're going to do, ready for the first case?
Yes.
Okay. We're going to have our first case, Andrew Perry, 111 South Quincy Avenue, Block 17, Lot 6, in the S40 District, to grant C variance for left side setback regarding proposed dormer and possibly others. Taxes and water are current, and proof of advertising and notifying is satisfied.
Roger Rubin? Yes. The subject property is a 5-bedroom, 2.5-story, single-family home on a lot of 75 by 80 feet or 6,000 square feet. The house is set to the left of the oversized lot with a driveway and garage on the right side and entrance patios and porches in the center, including a covered porch in the rear center between the garage and the main house. This is an old, very well-maintained stone, stucco, seashore-style house of notable architectural interest. It has 3 bedrooms on the second floor and 2 at the 3rd level. The proposal herein is the enlargement of the 2 left side roof dormers to create larger bathrooms for the 2 bedrooms at that level. In so doing, they would be matching the left side smaller dormers with the 3 right side dormers in terms of size and configuration. The variances required are left side setback 10 feet required versus 2 feet 8 1/4 inches to match the existing. 3rd floor area, 50% of the 2nd floor area allowed versus 56.9% considering the 3rd level floor space with head height of 5 feet or greater. Comments. Site visits, as always, are instructive as to detriments, if any, to neighbors or harm to the zone plan. 2. Regarding the side setback, the house to the left is about 15 feet from the property line to its main wall with an intervening driveway, garage, and portico, thus a total separation from the enlarged dormers of about 18 feet. That house already looks at the 2 smaller dormers, which are being replaced, and the dormers themselves will house bathrooms, and the layout within the bathrooms is such that privacy concerns would appear minimal. 3, there is a letter in the package from the neighbors supporting the application stating they have reviewed the plan in detail. 4, there appears no impact regarding the enlarged dormers on houses to the rear or across Quincy Avenue. Also, the design treatment of the new dormers respects the historical architectural integrity of the house. 5, as to the 3rd floor area with head height of 5 feet or greater variance, consider this analysis. Because the 2nd floor front is set back from the 1st floor, its area is only 1,471 square feet, but it could have been the same 1,740 square feet that the first floor is. At 50%, that would have allowed a third floor with head height of 5 feet or more to be 870 square feet instead of the 837 that it is. It may be said, therefore, to be in compliance with the purposes of the zone plan. It's possible the original design of the house included a smaller second floor footprint, not just to provide a porch for the owners, but also to open up views to the beach from up the street. No conditions are suggested at this time.
Good evening, Eric Goldstein on behalf of the applicant. With me this evening is Rebecca Lauer. She's a licensed New Jersey architect. I'd like to have her sworn and have her qualified, please.
My name is Rebecca Fellerman Lauer.
Rebecca, where are you employed?
I'm with Asher Associates Architects.
And for how long have you been employed?
I've been there just short of 11 years,
And how long have you been a licensed architect in New Jersey?
a little over 9 years.
Erica, you get closer to the mic yourself.
Thank you.
She's good.
Okay. Rebecca, would you walk us through the plan as submitted and take the microphone?
Okay. So the existing house has 2 gable dormers on this side, and what we're proposing is to replace them with 2 dormers that would match these dormers on the opposite side. So the opposite side has 3 matching dormers. We would be replacing just 2, these 2 matching on this side in these locations. As you can see from sheet V1, the light blue represents the floors below, which of course encroach into the side yard. The area that we're proposing of the 2 new dormers are within that area. So there is no expansion of the nonconformity with the new dormers. And of course, what we're trying to do is save this house. Of course, you know, we could have scraped the lot. We're not doing that. We want to keep this beautiful home and be respectful of its lovely architecture by matching the dormers on the opposite side.
And in doing so, by matching the dormers from one side to the other, there's also a need for a variance for the third floor habitable space, correct?
Correct. Basically, the new square footage of the 2 new dormers is slightly larger at the 5-foot level than what's here now. So we do need that 50% variance. We exceed the 50% of the second floor below, but as Roger pointed out, we don't exceed it if we were to calculate on the larger floor.
Do you see any detriment to the overall zoning plan if the board could grant this variance?
Not at all.
And in your professional opinion, the positives of this variance?
Absolutely.
Unless the board has any questions, we'll open it to the public, I suppose.
Okay, does anybody have any questions from the board? Comments? Would anybody from the public like to speak? Okay, public portion's closed?
I have no conditions.
No? Okay.
At this point in time, I guess we can have somebody make a motion for the variances that are requested. There'll be 7 votes. It's for left side setback and third floor area, as indicated in Mr. Rubin's report.
I'll make a motion. I'll second.
All right.
Tom Collins?
This is kind of a real easy one. Obviously, every time Mr. Asher or his associates come before this board, they just have excellent plans. They keep the integrity of Margate. This is de minimis in terms of any impact on the neighborhood. Actually, keeping the house and making it prettier and just what they've done with this, I think is outstanding. So I give you a lot of credit. So I vote in favor.
Clem Oslowski?
Well, as before, it's always a pleasure to review drawings from the Asher office. They fully show whatever we have to deal with and exactly what's proposed in detail. These new dormers are actually an improvement to the architecture of this handsome old building. and shows great respect for the existing project. I very happily vote yes.
Jim Galantino?
I'm sorry, I'm trying to wake up here. It was a long meeting last night.
Morning.
So compared to, what is your name again? I'm sorry? Rebecca. Okay, I spoke to you a couple times on the phone. I don't see any detriment to nobody from the public came to fight this variance, so I am going to approve it. Thank you.
Mike Cristaldi?
I think you did a great job on the architecture of it. I think it's just going to enhance the house completely. I definitely vote yes for this.
Craig Palmisano?
It's going to match, it's going to fit in the house perfectly. It's going to look like it was never changed at all. It's the way it should be. I vote yes.
David Carter?
Yes, I vote yes, and for all the reasons that the others said, agreed to.
Mike Richmond?
Yeah, I don't see any detriment to the neighborhood. I think it's an enhancement to the property, and I vote yes also.
Application passes 7-0. Eric, would you?
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
You signed it. Thank you. That was easy.
Okay. Our next case is Audrey Soslog, 310 North Essex Avenue, Block 505.02, Lot 7, in the S40 District to grant C variances for side setback, possible front setback, and possibly others. Taxes and water are current, and proof of advertising and notifying is satisfied.
Roger Rubin.
Excuse me, Roger,
Hold on a second.
before you speak, we're just going to put on the record Mr. Cristaldi's conflict, and he's not going to be hearing this application. Sorry about that.
I do. The subject property is an existing 1.5-story single-family house on a lot of 50 by 98.59, and it's 4,930 square feet in area. The house currently has 4 bedrooms and 4 off-street parking spaces. It has a right side porch entrance into the house and a deck on top of the garage accessed by an outdoor stairway, which has been there so long it precedes current zoning restrictions. Per the architect Peter Weiss plans, the house would be elevated to a first-floor elevation of 11.12 and then would top off 19 feet 3 inches above that point. A new front porch would be added, which meets side and front setbacks, except for a small rectangular portion of it at the right side that connects it to the existing side porch. A new front door is proposed and a projected fireplace onto the right side porch. The plan includes reduction of paved surfaces and an increase in vegetative cover from 13.5% to 25%. Also, an increase in front landscape area from 61% to 73%. Shrubs and trees are to be supplemented and brought to code compliance. Variances required and considerations. First, there's a side setback for the porch connecting section. 8 feet is required versus 3.31 feet. This is a diminutive portion of the porch, being 36 square feet, as shown in the shaded area of the plan. It will be uncovered in line with the existing side porch, and it projects well in front of the house to the right. Second, building coverage. The projected fireplace into the right side on the porch measures 2 feet by 5 feet, and this 10 square foot projection increases coverage from 43.0% to 43.2%. This is de minimis and need not be discussed at any length. Note, there is no variance for setback as the projection up to 2 feet is permitted. This then is another of the several houses on this block that will be elevated and enhanced for floodproofing advantages and aesthetic upgrades. No conditions are suggested at this time.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Stephen Browner on behalf of the Audrey Soslog Revocable Trust. As I understand, you have copies of the plans, have had the memorandum read into
the record. The architect as well as the builder are here if you have any questions. Thank you. You want me to repeat myself? Oh, okay. My name is Stephen Browndorf. I'm an attorney here on behalf of the Audrey Soslow Revocable Trust. I understand that you have copies of the plans and the memorandum has been read into record. The builder, Michael Cristato, and architect Peter Weiss are available if you have any questions.
Board have any questions?
Roger, the heightening of the garage, since that's close to the property line, does that involve any kind of a variance?
The height of the garage?
Well, they're adding cubage up on top of the existing garage, which is within the side yard setback.
The house, they're not adding anything to the house.
Oh, but they are to the garage.
No, that doesn't. There's no, you're talking about FAR?
No, it's within the setbacks. And garage, don't garages have certain heights?
I don't know what the variance would be. According to our ordinance, when you elevate a house to flood elevation vertically, you create no variance whatsoever by virtue of setbacks, coverage, or whatever.
But you're not elevating the garage. The garage is still on the ground, and,
right,
and it's going up, if you look at the plan. So by elevating this, you're actually coming up over the garage. So that should be Clem's right.
Well, but that area above the garage is already there. No,
it's not.
Take a look at the left side picture. It shows.
Okay. There's a difference.
Yeah, I missed that. I'm sorry. Clem, you're right. Peter, could you explain that? Why? What's going in that space above where the garage was?
State your full name, please.
Peter White?
Raise your right hand. You swear to testify your
Okay, we're raising the house 4 foot 8 inches. We're not adding any parking underneath or anything like that. So the crawl space height gets increased. The crawl space height will be increased. The garage will gain 4 foot 8 inches in ceiling height. We're not adding any square footage to the garage. And there was an existing deck above the garage, which would be elevated along with the house by virtue of raising the garage.
So you're adding cubage
We're adding, yes, volume.
within the setbacks. I
Yes.
don't know whether it requires a variance or not. That's why I'm asking the question.
That's true with the house in general, so.
You know, I didn't notice that. We did that on other cases, like Carmen Rome's house, when it was raised, right? Remember that, Jimmy, right after we allowed the attached garage to rise up with the house, so it is in the relative same position as the house, and then to build down to the ground below it, so that the cars could still go in at grade level. And I think maybe that's okay. I don't really, I mean, if the board disagrees, you can call it a variance.
I would say, just to be safe, that whether it is or it isn't a variance, I don't think anybody's against them doing it.
Yeah,
I think it's just...
I'm not against it. I
Right,
just
me
wanted
either.
to
Well, then,
clear the record if it's required.
If it's required, and then they have to come back later, it would be kind of a shame.
I would say it's consistent with what we have done on house elevation cases where we haven't required it to be a variance. So I wouldn't call it a variance.
Stan, are we all right with that? So nobody can come back later?
I'm thinking the notification that was sent probably asked for variances and then had a general clause for any other variances required. So the question I have is, what's the variance? Is it's already encroaching into the side yard setback, the garage, they're just raising it? Is that the issue?
Well, if you think it's a variance, the variance would be rear and side setback for the additional piece of wall above where it is now.
Why would that be a variance if
Is it expanding further into the setback, or are we? It is.
Expanding the space.
Vertically.
It's a vertical
Right.
extension of a non-conforming wall,
Okay.
which we have in the past allowed in house elevation cases to happen without calling it a variance.
Well,
So
I mean, since they already noticed for a variance, I would just say this, why not vote on the variance for that?
well, then,
unless there's,
if that's our legal advice,
right.
then...
And then they're safe, and I don't think, I mean, if the board has any questions about that or any problems, that's added, that's a problem for any of the board members, why don't we bring that to their attention? If not, we'll include it in the vote, and we'll let it rest at that.
Do you have any problems with that, Mr. Solicitor? Of the applicant. So
One other question for Pete.
Your microphone, please.
That's all crawl space under the house, Pete?
Yes.
No utilization? Specific utilization, just a high crawl space?
I mean, ultimately, it'd be high enough for some storage, but that's it.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else from the board? Anyone from the public like to speak? Okay, public portion is closed. So I hear go ahead.
But the motion would just be, as set forth in Mr. Rubin's report, for side setback, porch, building coverage, and the additional now garage height expansion, that would be a C variance. So it'd be motion in the affirmative for those 3 C variances, please.
no conditions.
No condition.
I'll make a motion in the affirmative for each of the 3 variances listed.
Tom Collins?
I vote yes for the application. I think it's very minor, the variance is requested. You're not actually putting any living space in above the garage. Increasing the volume is not a major deal. I think it's smart that you get the variances for it so nobody can come back at you later. What's going on in that neighborhood and the homes that are being elevated and renovated, it's almost like a rejuvenation of that street, and I think this is consistent with it. I think it has all the positive aspects of an improvement to the neighborhood with very little negative impacts, and I think it's going to increase the value of the neighborhood and Margate.
Clem Wozleski?
What they're asking for is very minor. I see no negative impact on the neighbors or the neighborhood. I vote yes.
Jim Galantino?
I approve this application. I don't see any detriment to any of the neighbors.
Craig Palmisano?
I agree with the fellow board members. Just a small rectangular deck in the front for easier access. I vote yes.
Despina Hess?
I'm going to vote in favor of each of the variances requested. Certainly, the building coverage is the true meaning of a de minimis request. As to the other requests, I heard no negative or detriment to the neighborhood, and certainly heard no negative responses from neighbors. So I'm also going to vote yes.
Mike Bridgman?
Yeah, I think it's great to keep raising these houses, and I'm going to vote yes.
Application passes 7-0. Steve, would you please come sign?
Joanna, did you call for David Carter to vote, or did David Carter get?
Oh, I'm sorry, David Carter, your vote.
I vote yes for the application. It enhances what's going on in the neighborhood.
Thank you.
Okay. Our next case is David Slapp, 9131 Fremont Avenue, Block 525, Lot 3, in the S40 District to grant a C variance for the elevation of proposed expanded portions of the rear deck and possibly others taxes and water are current, and proof of advertising and notifying is satisfied.
Roger Rubin. I do. The subject property is an existing two-story, single-family home on the bay, slightly irregular, with uplands dimensioned 60 feet by 100 and 6,138 square feet in area. It presently has a bayfront wooden deck of about 20 feet deep by 30 feet wide at elevation 10.97 NGVD 1929, almost 2 feet above the current ordinance maximum for such decks of 9 feet, 1929 datum. This deck is, of course, a legal nonconformity per previous zoning. As the deck is just a few inches below the floor of the house, it is convenient for the homeowners going in and out to enjoy the bayfront and entertain. The case herein, per the Ponzio plan submitted, is to enlarge that deck at that elevation, and the enlarged portion behind the house is a variance as it will match the existing. Also proposed is a hot tub within the enlarged deck. Variances are elevation of enlarged portion of deck behind the house with hot tub. Per the ordinance, rear decks on the bay or canals can be built at no higher than 9.0, 1929 datum, and the proposed expansion is at elevation 10.97. This applies to any part of the expanded area behind the house. Next variance, setback of the deck, side pieces right and left. Small portions of the expanded deck on both sides are not behind the house. Both have steps going down to grade. These sections come under a different standard, having to meet principal building setbacks of 10 feet on each side and combined 22 for two sides. In both cases, these go to the side property lines. And the third is landscape area. 35% is required. Currently, it would be 32.4% per the Ponzio calculations. Comments. The board should keep in mind that while there are 3 waterfront deck cases in February, we had one yesterday, we have 2 tonight, and even though there are similarities, as always, every case is taken on its own merits based on the situation on the ground. As usual, then, site visits will inform as to view obstruction, noise, or privacy issues regarding houses on both sides. In deliberating, consider that except for the wraparound side pieces, it is not the location, but the elevation that is in question. If 2 feet lower, there would be no variance. Second, per the new ordinance, the spa surround fence must be 6 feet high. The board may wish to consider conditions regarding view if that is an issue. The conditions may relate to materials, design, or height of fencing. 3, the proposed deck elevation herein pretty much matches the elevation of rear decks on both houses to the right and left, although both have setbacks from their side property lines. Regarding the right side house, there is a tall, mature evergreen screen creating privacy at this time. It's hard to say, I was out there in the snow, whose property that evergreen screen is on. 4, regarding the landscape variance, would it not be easy to eliminate the same by creating small landscape areas along both right and left property lines? In fact, the strip on the left within the utility easement should probably not have a deck built over it anyhow, and this may resolve the matter. Except as set forth above, no additional conditions are put forth at this time. And in deck on the bay cases, we have an engineer's review, and that's attached, and if approved, any conditions therein should be a condition.
Thank you, Mr. Rubin.
Yes, sir.
Board member Chris Dale. I represent David Slack.
The microphone, please.
I represent David Slack with respect to his property, 9131 Fremont Avenue, Block 525, Lot 3. It's in the S40 zone. As Mr. Rubin had pointed out, this is an application for relief by way of variance for a rear deck elevation coming out of the house, as well as for the side yard setbacks to that deck. There's also a relief requested for a hot tub, and location of a hot tub, and fence for that. Having read Mr. Rubin's report, we have a couple modifications to the plan, which I think the board will be happy with and which might help speed things along. John, a lot last night, so I'm tired.
John Barnhart. I do.
John, your office prepared the plan that's been submitted and being considered tonight? That's correct. And we've had some discussions and visited the property with Mr. Slatt. We'll look at and investigate ways to address some concerns raised by Mr. Rubin Board.
That's correct.
Would you...
Press, we can hear you.
John, your office prepared the plan?
Yes.
And we've looked at ways to address some of the concerns raised in Mr. Rubin's report?
That's correct.
Would you give the board the benefit of the property, the zoning, the application, and how it's been modified to address those concerns?
Sure. Was I sworn already? Yeah, that's right. You swore me in already, right? I'm losing it. As Chris pointed out, the property is known as Block 525. It's lots 3 and 3.01. It's right at the bend of Fremont Avenue. I'm sure everybody's very familiar with it. The application before you this evening was to, if you were able to visit the property, you know that there's a deck that's essentially even with the finished floor of the building, right to the rear of the building, and it's essentially centered on the rear of the existing home. And Mr. Slapp's proposal was to expand that deck into the side yards to the side property lines, as well as install a hot tub within that deck area. In response to some of the concerns in Mr. Rubin's report, in relooking at the property and trying to reduce the deviation to the greatest extent that we can feasible, what we would like to do is modify our application this evening, and I think it will make things much simpler. First, Mr. Slapp decided not to do the hot tub at this time, so that is no longer going to be part of the request this evening. Secondarily, we look at the side property line. There's a nice privacy hedgerow along that side. Mr. Slapp is proposing to slide that line over so that his proposed edge of deck will be 3 foot from that side property line, which will allow for preservation of that hedgerow.
That's on the top side of the plan we're talking about right now, John?
That would be to the north of the top side of the plan. That's correct.
That would help preserve that existing evergreen buffer?
That's correct. And then on the southerly side, or the bottom side, to eliminate the need for a landscape coverage variance, and also to allow for some buffer from our adjacent neighbor, and also to deal with Mr. Rubin's concern with regard to the easement, we're proposing to increase the setback on that side, the southerly side, also to 3 feet. And we will construct Mr. Slapp will construct the deck in a manner that no foundation systems or structural systems would go down into the easement area. There would just be a small portion of the deck that would cantilever over the easement area. So,
John, that easement area extends across the property line to the neighboring property as well?
it does. It's an 18-foot wide easement, 10 feet on the neighbor's side and 8 feet on Mr. Slapp's side.
And that neighbor also has a deck within that easement area running to the property line, but not at the same elevation?
His deck is lower, that's correct, but his deck essentially goes to his side property line, and it runs from the back of his house out to the bulkhead.
And the method of construction over the easement area will such that deck easily removable should the easement need to be accessed?
Certainly, and as I mentioned, any foundation systems into the ground will be clear of the easement so as to make certain that the pipe system is not disturbed.
And with removal of that 3-foot section on both the easterly and westerly side of the deck, done calculations as to whether or not that addresses the landscape deviation?
Yeah, it brings us just into compliance, so we will be at the 35% landscape coverage.
So therefore, the application is modified, Mr. Bergman, to extend the deck bulkhead at the elevation stated in the application, and for a setback not of 0, but of 3 at the stated elevation.
For the deck setback, I'm sorry, for the deck setback. Side yard, not combined. Combined is going to be less than, we'll just add 3 there.
Mr. Bergman, with those modifications and with the conditions of both the neighboring properties, Mr. Collins' bottom neighbor to the west, I'll say, do you think by granting variances that would bring any substantial detriment to those neighbors?
No, I don't. I mean, as Mr. Rubin's report points out, you see a lot of these, especially in today's world where everybody recognizes that things need to be higher. Finished floors are higher, decks are higher. This is, with the proposed modifications this evening, we believe that Mr. Slapp has gone to great lengths to make certain that he's not creating a negative impact on either one of his adjacent neighbors. While his neighbors' decks are at a lower elevation, they actually do both have decks essentially to their side property line. It's not an uncommon occurrence, as you know,
on the lagoon areas, there are many, many elevated decks that are in the side setback, and in many cases, all the way to the property line, On these areas, the properties are bigger. You don't see as many, but for the most part, they do have at least at-grade decking that they're able to utilize as back patio area all the way to the sideline. So we think these deviations help make sure that the neighbors are protected from a negative impact standpoint. And I think that the real concerns of the application that we came in here this evening dealing with have been addressed.
Thanks, John. I can tell you, Mr. Chair, members of the board, that Mr. Slapp has spoken to neighbors on the east side, and neither of them have a problem with the application, even with the deck shown to the other property. And that's all we have to say. Mr.
I have
Slapp?
a question for John. Do you know what the actual height is from grade to the bottom of the girders of the deck?
The bottom of the girders existing?
Or, yeah, what it's going to be?
Well, I mean, the finished grade, as I stood there, I went there today, the finished grade of that deck from existing grade to the top decking came right to about my hip. So I'm going to say they're probably about a 12-inch girder. So bottom of the joist to the deck.
30 inches?
Yeah, or less.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you had mentioned cantilevering the right side of the property, or the Longport side, whichever is...
Yes, the Longport side, correct.
Were you also planning on cantilevering the other side?
We weren't, because there's really no need to. We're not dealing with an easement area over there.
Well, what's on the ground? Grass?
What's on the ground now?
What's going to be in that 3 foot?
Oh, there's it's basically along the property line, there's an existing privacy tree row, so we're staying off of that.
Right, but what's going to be on your ground?
Just grass.
Grass,
Yeah.
grass or
There'll
pebbles?
basically be a mulch bed or...
Pavers on there now, some of the pavers will obviously be removed, but not all. Now they're on pavers, and that landscape
Okay, I'm just getting to the point that if you cantilevered that side a little bit too, that it would give you easier access on the ground level to mow, to cut, to get in, to do things.
Keep it clean.
To keep it clean.
Yeah. I mean, generally...
The deck is going to be at the 3 foot, and the other side is at the 3 foot. You're actually on the ground level going to be a little bit more. It might be a better plan.
I mean, generally speaking, you probably will set that row of foundation columns in a couple feet anyway and let the joists go past. So it's not as much of a cantilever as what we're talking about here, but there probably will end up being a natural cantilever on that side anyway.
I have a question for John.
Yes.
Since you're removing the hot tub, are you not putting a fence up? It says a proposed 5 to 6 foot high fence,
You're not proposing anything.
No proposal right now, Craig, for a fence.
because you removed the hot tub.
Correct.
Right,
The fence
okay.
would not be part of the application anymore.
Okay.
John?
Yes.
Did you say you were going to plan the area between the deck extension and the property line of the Longport side? Landscape that?
No proposal right now to do that, Clem, only because we need to discuss that with that neighbor. I think before you do that, create any kind of buffer, we'll talk to the neighbor about that. But it will not be pavered, it will be landscaped. We need to address the landscape variance.
I don't know about the rest of the board, but I sure would be a lot happier if it was 5 foot instead of 3 foot.
5 foot less.
Off the property line.
Yeah. What would that do? Why?
Would give you more separation from the neighbor. This deck is considerably higher than the neighbor's property. Now, as Chris just said, the neighbors don't object.
Let's see if the neighbor's here. And they object.
The neighbor's not here. I have a letter from the neighbor. He approves of the plan. He has no objection. I'm not going to enter into evidence. But Mr. Slash did what he's supposed to do. He spoke to those neighbors. And the neighbor's okay with it even on the property line.
Well, that's...
Your neighbor here.
Tom Hanks, neighbors in Atlantic City.
Why don't we hear from him?
May I finish my sentence before both of you interrupt me again? That may be today's neighbors, but X number of years from now, may be different neighbors. They may feel differently.
That's why we have the 3 feet, so we can cut that out.
3 feet's not enough, in my opinion.
Well, we think we can do it within 3 feet. We've done it before.
You got your opinion, I got mine.
Anybody else from the board have any comments, questions? Okay, anybody from the public like to speak?
Thomas J. Collins. 91. I currently have no problem. I live on the right side, which is towards Atlantic City. The trees that are out there right now are about 12 feet high, spruce trees. They're on my property. They're going to stay. I have no problem with what he's doing. I didn't know he was going 3 feet back. I was fine if he went right to the property line, 3 feet back. I'm very happy with that. David's a good neighbor. All the neighbors on the whole block get along. We have no problems with anything. So whatever he wants to do, I'm all for it.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else from the public?
Robin Scott, 9211 Amherst Avenue, Ray Scott Stock. Now, I'm not a closely adjacent neighbor, but the way my property goes is like this, and his comes like this. And I got a notice about that, and I'm here just in support of the deck project, because as Tom said, David's been a great neighbor. Clem pointed out, neighbors do change, and Mr. Slapp bought his house. It appears to me his family enjoys it. He's on season number 3, going into, living on the bay. His family enjoys it, and I have zero objections. Obviously, there's a dock project going on also. I may have input on that. My goal is to stay in business and help him be able to enjoy the bay and educate the newcomers to the kind of lifestyle I've been able to enjoy here. We're going into year 57 in March, so our family's very proud of that. So thank you. I support the project.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, public portion is closed.
Chris, I have a question. For the setbacks, the left side, my understanding is that you're going to modify that to 3 feet. The right side's still going to be 0 feet? No. Is both 3 feet? 3. Okay, thank you.
Which eliminates the landscape variance.
Thank you. All right. I just wanted to be clear for the motion.
Okay.
Do we want to make a motion or wait for the conditions?
Can we get a motion?
I make a motion, we approve it.
Second.
It'd be a motion with the amendments made, just to be clear for the record. It's for deck elevation, setbacks for the deck right and left are being modified from 0 feet to 3 feet on both sides. Combines being modified because of that also, with the 3 feet on each side rather than 0 feet. And the landscape area variance has been eliminated based on the amended plans. The conditions I have are all those conditions in the engineer's report dated February 11, 2015, and that the deck shall not interfere with access to the easement.
So we're still waiting for the engineer's report?
Excuse me? It's attached, yep.
Okay. All right, so somebody going to make a motion? Oh, you did? Okay. Okay, great.
Tom Collins?
This is a beautiful property in a beautiful neighborhood, and when it was at a 0 setback, it was a little iffy to me. The fact that they're going to cantilever the deck on the sides and actually give almost 5 feet on the ground level, I think is a plus. If the neighbors were here bitching, or if it was going to be a party house or crazy people in it, it might be a different story. But you have a beautiful home, it's a beautiful neighborhood, so I think I'll vote yes for this.
Clem Oslewski?
Well, again, I seem to be a voice crying in the wilderness. I can see the way the board's going, so I'll go along with it and vote yes.
Jim Galantino?
Come on, Clem. We like when you go against the grain.
I'm tired too, Jim.
I don't see any detriment. We had 2 neighbors come in for a positive. I think if we need to really address our deck heights, because the bulkheads are getting higher, so that'll be another thing we can throw on the hopper. in reference to the CBD district. So I approve this application.
Mike Cristaldi?
I approve the application. I see no negative impact.
Craig Palmisano?
I agree with Mike. There's no negative impacts. I agree.
David Carter?
I agree with the application.
Mike Richmond?
Yeah, I approve it. I'm glad that the neighbor was willing to, make the modifications, and I say yes.
Application passes 7-0. Chris, please come sign. Mrs. Dempsey.
Okay, our next case is Ryan and Cindy Dempsey, 9001 Amherst Avenue, Block 522, Lot 13, in the S40 District to grant C variances for front setback on Union Avenue, combined side setbacks regarding the first floor rear addition and possibly others. Taxes and water are current, and proof of advertising and notifying is satisfied.
Roger Rubin. I do. You want to announce that now? Stanley, you're...
Sorry about that, Roger.
Sure. You're the only one. The subject property herein is a one-story, single-family home, which, if approved as to the submitted plans by Peter Weiss Architect, will be elevated and enlarged on the first floor and have a second floor added. Presently, the house has 2 bedrooms and 1 parking space. If approved, it will have 4 bedrooms and 2 spaces, the second one being under the elevated house. Beside the elevation, other architectural enhancements will be applied, as well as upgraded landscape plantings and street trees per the submitted site plan. The variances required are first, front setback on Amherst. 20.8 feet is required versus 20.67 feet to the proposed second floor. This is the very definition of de minimis and needs no further discussion. Front setback on Union, 18.6 feet is required by the 200-foot front survey, as compared to 14.04 feet to the wall of the new second floor and 6.38 feet to the front of a proposed second floor deck. The first floor is exempted as a house raising does not need to meet current setbacks. And finally, combined side setbacks, 19.7 feet is required versus 20.99 feet now, and that is reduced to 16.28 feet due to the rear alcove addition on the first floor, which provides a first floor dining room and a second floor bathroom and closet. Comments. The Union Avenue front setback variances should be evaluated as to impacts, if any, on neighbors in terms of light, air, or views. Site visits are instructive. Keep in mind the inherent difficulties regarding corner properties as to not only enlargements but also new construction. The receding building mass from the street side at Union creates openness, and the enlarged house still appears to be modest in scale and in conformity with the neighborhood pattern, especially with other houses that have been elevated nearby. Next, the combined setback variance stems from the rear bayside addition mentioned above. Keep in mind that except for that approximately 16-foot long portion of the house, the rest of the house is set back more. So practically speaking, most of the house has a combined setback of 20.99 feet on the first floor and 25.48 feet on the new second floor. This appears to conform in spirit to the open space rationale for the combined side setback requirement in the ordinance. All other aspects of zoning are respected, landscaping is upgraded, flood prevention is assured, and aesthetic upgrades are included. This may be looked upon as a continuation of the upgrades and resurgence of this gateway corridor into the Bayfront district of Margate. No conditions are suggested at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Member of the Board. Chris Balance, and I represent my neighbors, Ryan and Cindy Dempsey, who are here tonight, and owners of the property at 9001 Amherst Avenue. It's on the corner of Amherst and Union. It is identified on the tax map as Block 522, Lot 13, in the S40 zone. This is an application that really comes to the new setback ordinance, particularly dealing with corner properties. What the Dempseys want to do, I'll do it for Clem's sake, we're both, I'm talking soft and you can't hear that well tonight. What the Dempseys want to do is lift their house, which will create some off-street parking for them, which they have none now. Lift the house, exceed the elevation 11 first floor, but then only incorporate 2 stories above, so they fall well within the height parameters. With that being done, because of the existing conditions, we need a de minimis setback on Amherst. Interestingly, the front yard setback requirement on Amherst is 20 feet, and they're going to honor that. The front yard setback requirement on Union is 18 feet. Build anything if you were going to start new. And as Pete explained to me, I didn't realize. Stuck with the resulting front yard setback on Union. Nonetheless, even with raising the house and the addition, they're honoring their existing front yard setback on Union, the only deviation really being a deck above now a first floor element, so they can have a deck on the second floor on Union. That's at the 6.38 setback. So what we seek with respect to the application, as Roger pointed out, is the de minimis front yard setback, the Union Avenue setback, and combined side yard setbacks, and I can let Pete speak to those a little bit more specifically.
Peter Weiss.
Peter, you prepared the plan that the board is here to consider?
Yes.
You met with the Dempseys and designed the house in accordance with some of their desires and along with the zoning ordinance requirements?
Yes.
Would you please just walk the board through the project, what the variances are, and why you believe?
Okay. The existing house is a rather small, one-story structure. It's less than 1,200 square feet. Has 2 bedrooms on the side and the living space towards the right side. This property was flooded during Sandy, so the owners wished to raise it to an extent where they could park underneath, gain some storage, get it above the flood elevation, and then also add a second floor, which contains 2 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms. The front setback is, if you look down the street, these 3 houses were built at the same time. At some point, vinyl siding was added to this, so it added, about 1.5 inches to the thickness of the wall, which is why the setback is a little bit less than the other 2 properties. And as Chris mentioned, going up Union Avenue, the lots are all going up the street to the north. They're all 80 foot deep, so they're 27 feet deeper than us. So those houses, of course, are set back further off the street. And as Chris also mentioned, if you started conforming with all the setbacks, there really isn't much left. I mean, we actually investigated doing that, taking the mass of the house and kicking it over to the left, but we thought that was a very awkward-looking building, so we decided to pursue centering the mass of the house on the existing building. So that's basically how we ended up with the volume that we have. So on the second floor, we did, as mentioned, step it in on either side, which reduces the mass on Union Avenue, as well as on the west side. The small addition in the rear effectively enabled us to add the stair, which of course isn't there now, which gets us both down into the ground floor and up into the second floor. It still preserves an area for a dining room, which is currently sort of here.
That's an addition at the second floor level?
Well, it goes all the way up, really, all 3 levels. But that does protrude into what is effectively the combined side setback, even though it meets the minimum side setback.
With the addition of the second floor, I know you had considered the neighbor in the center of the block on Amherst and pushed the addition back so that side yard meets the requirement
That's correct.
Do you think that the house as it's designed with the variances that we are requesting have any substantial negative impact on any of the surrounding neighbors or the neighborhood?
No.
Why would that be?
I think, when it's all said and done, the house is still less than 2,400 square feet with the addition, so it's still in scale with the neighborhood, or maybe even a little bit smaller than some. And it still preserves the light and air, I think, going up Union Avenue and to the neighbor to the west and to the north.
I'm just happy about that, to have that area of Amherst that would start to come off the side, right? What's interesting is the existing house, you talk about the need for a renovation like this. The existing house is 2 really small bedrooms and 1 bathroom. With this addition renovation of the lift, it's only going to 4 bedrooms. These guys have been put down all the time, use the beach, use the house. This would be really perfect for them. I think they've done it in a way that respects the neighbors. I met with the famous Steve Altman. It was right next to them. I had the pleasure of meeting with him and his mother. And they are thrilled with the project, particularly because it doesn't impact them at all. So, and I know that Dempsey's met with the immediate neighbor on Union Avenue, who I think said he actually also supported the project.
I could add, I'm actually working right now currently with the neighbors to the north, and they're going to raise their house also and park underneath, so it's basically the same strategy they're going to follow, even though they are going to actually add a floor above. So they're going to do essentially the same thing.
It's nice to see we're essentially working with the same setbacks while at the same time keeping all that landscaping, providing off-street parking in the area which is needed, particularly in most places. I don't have any more witnesses than them. If you're here, if you'd like to hear from them, that really concludes our presentation.
So there's no off-street parking now, and there's going to be 2 spaces created?
There's currently a driveway here.
Right.
It actually looks like the front lawn, Mike, there is a driveway.
Okay.
Looks like it's a bird drive.
Okay, good. Okay. Anybody else from the board? Okay, anybody from the public like to speak? All right, public portion is closed. Is there any conditions?
No conditions.
No conditions?
I'll make a motion, we approve. Any second?
I'll second.
Tom Collins?
This is a really, really tough neighborhood. You guys got devastated. That whole street got devastated during Sandy. I mean, I never saw so much damage when I was down there. It looked like a war zone. I know your house. I know you really kept it nice. I think Peter did an excellent job in trying to fit this on a corner property, because corner properties are just horrible for zoning purposes anyway. I think it's going to be a major improvement. I think it's going to help continue, because there's still a lot of homes in that Union Avenue block that just need to be either elevated or get some attention to them. And maybe you being on the anchor on the corner, it's going to stimulate them. I wish you a lot of luck. I think this is going to be a great project, so I vote in favor.
Clem Oslewski?
There certainly are practical difficulties here. That 53-plus frontage on Amherst, because they divided the end of block into 3s. And of course, the flood restrictions which are upon us now. I think all the solutions here are reasonable. Considering those, I vote yes.
Jim Galantino?
I'd like to give you a permit right now to get that house in the air. That's a great, that's another positive check mark for Margate's CRS program, a repetitive loss property that's now removed from our rolls. So I don't see any detriment, and I approve this application.
Mike Cristaldi?
As with Mr. Galantino, I approve the application.
Craig Palmisano? Craig Palmisano is recused?
Craig's recused. He's within the 200 feet, so that's just part of the record.
Okay. David Carter? Despina Hess?
I vote in favor of the application as to each of the 3 variances requested. I see no negative impact or detriment to the neighborhood. I think, as Peter stated, in this case, centering the mass, all the requiring variances created a nicer aesthetic, so I vote in favor of the application.
Michael Richmond?
Yeah, I think as far as the Union Avenue setback is concerned, I think that it is a hardship that the rest of the lots going down Union are 80 feet deep. So, yeah, I think it's a great project, and I approve it.
Application passes 7-0.
Thank you very much.
Chris. Okay, moving right along. Our No, I'm good. You're good. Our next case is Walter and Marge First, 4 South Vendome Avenue, Block 123, Lot 2, in the S40 district, to grant C variances for left side setback, pool setback, and possibly others. Taxes and water are current, and proof of advertising and notifying is satisfied.
Roger Rubin. I do. The subject property is a one-story framed single-family house to be demolished on a lot of 47 feet frontage by 103.82 in depth, irregular, with a total area of 5,293 square feet. To replace this house, the applicants propose a 2.5-story, 30-foot-high, 6-bedroom house with 4 parking spaces per the plan submitted by Ponzio and architect J.K.R. Partners. The variance required. The only variance specifically requested is combined side setbacks. The requirement, 37% of lot width, comes to 18.8 feet versus 16 feet as planned. Both individual side setbacks meet the minimum required, and there is considerable space to the houses on both sides, 23 feet from the property line to the house on the right, the one facing Ventnor Avenue, and 13.9 feet from the property line to the left house. So as to the open space consideration on combined side setbacks, there is a significant amount. Also, per the angle of the right property line, the setback widens to 8.19 feet, and due to the house design, the left setback widens to 17 feet on that side. On average, the combined setbacks far exceed what is required. The portion of the house wherein this setback applies is only about 20 feet long by 2.8 feet wide. This is about 1/3 of the length of the house. The other 2/3 of the house's length greatly exceed the combined setbacks. Number 3, front setback at 18.17 feet exceeds the required 17.17. Rear setback at 30 feet far exceeds the required 20.7 feet. Building coverage at 27.9 falls under the allowed 30%. Landscape areas exceed what is mandated. Should this be approved, it would meet flood requirements as well as modern design standards. Approval should be conditioned on no additional variances being uncovered upon receipt of full-scale schematic plans, as well as proper first-floor elevation placement, which is not shown in the plans that were received. Also, there needs to be confirmation that all roof pitches are at 5/12 or steeper. Otherwise, no conditions are accepted, are suggested.
Thank you, Mr. Rubin. Members of the board, my name is Chris Bayless, and I represent Walter and Marjorie First, who are here with us this evening with Mark Nashstein. They recently purchased the Stringer property, not the one that we know of on the Parkway. Stringer is also on the property right behind that on Vendome, 4 South Vendome. The first had the property remediated, closed on it, and now submit this application to the board in order to build a new single-family home at that location. It's identified on your tax map as Lot 2 in Block 123, the S40 zoning district. It is an irregularly shaped lot, which brings us here this evening for what we believe is really a technical variance because of the shape of the lot. And I can tell you, Mr. Collins will be interested in this. We did approach the Stringers to try and buy this sliver square off block, which would avoid having to come here for the variance so they can get started. That request was denied up until as of 30 days ago. We have been trying to not be here, but it didn't work out that way. I have an architect, I have a planner, and I'm not going to talk anymore. You can throw both these guys in at the same time. John can run me through the project, and Jerry, should you have any questions with respect to the house, can answer those.
Jerry what?
R-O-L-L-E-R.
John, your office surveyed the property and prepared the site plan and variance plans submitted to the board.
That's correct.
And you utilized Mr. Roller's plans in not only preparing your plans, but you're preparing your testimony, your variance justification.
Correct.
Please explain the property, the board design, as well as the project and variance.
Sure. I'll be quick because from a planning perspective, we see this as a pretty de minimis application, but the existing conditions to the left of the exhibit that I have here, as Chris pointed out, this is 4 Vendome Avenue. There's a one-story home on the property right now. That one-story home has a number of nonconformities. The side yard's less than 3 feet. The building's less than 3 feet from the sideline. It's just a little bit over 3 feet from the rear line. It's a structure that is outdated. This is a prime property for demolition and reconstruction of a new dwelling. Mr. Roller, with our client, Mr. First, has come up with we think, a very nice architectural design. It has a lot of different elements to it, including a side stair tower you see in the elevation or perspective view that you see there. And that really is the entire subject of tonight's application. The only deviation that we are requesting is, and I have it cross-hatched here, is that little, it's about 20 feet long, a couple feet wide, portion of this building that projects into the combined side yard setback. So your minimum setbacks or side yard setbacks are met, but the combined side yard setback is not met just for that small portion. You can see for the other greater than 50% of the length of the building, the side yard setback, you can see how the building jumps in and out, is much, much greater than the minimum combined side yard requirement. So we have a case here, as Chris pointed out, we have a unique lot case, but as everybody on the board knows, when you're tearing a house down, it's really kind of hard to argue a hardship. So what we have here, we think, is we have a case where the benefits outweigh any potential detriments. We are demolishing an old building, doesn't meet any flood requirements. We're eliminating 3 really large degree of nonconformity. We are exceeding the front yard setback requirement. We're exceeding the rear yard setback requirement. We're exceeding the landscape requirement. We are under the building coverage requirement. But for that one deviation of that small portion of the building on the side, this property or this project is entirely in compliance. From a land use justification standpoint, I think clearly the aesthetics of this property takes this lot to current standards, to what Margate is accustomed to, beautiful single-family homes on these lots in the S40 district.
The area of creating the variance deviation from yours, that's the stair tower, so you get those stairs down the center of the house.
That's correct, yes. Yes.
And it's only about 20 feet wide.
That's correct, and I do also want to point out, it is 11 feet from the side line, and adjacent to us, our neighbor adjacent to us does have his driveway on that side, and you can see the setbacks on our plan. Our neighbor is almost 14 feet from his sideline, so when you add his 14 to our 11, we're 25 feet between buildings on that side.
Certainly the average on each side would be combined side yard setback.
That's correct.
Do you think the house is designed to variance requested on roof line in any way?
No, not by any stretch. I think this is a case of deviation to create interesting architecture.
Do you think the plan is proposed creates substantial detriment to the zone plan or zone ordinance involved with?
I do not. Again, because we meet the minimum side yard and because of the number of degrees of nonconformity that we are eliminating, we think this actually is a benefit to the zone plan and zoning ordinance.
Mr. Roller is here, the first, sir, here stating when you're asking any questions. I do not intend to put them on.
I have a question. Go ahead. What is the roof pitch on the dormer-style roof?
Jerry, you're sworn, you see.
The main pitch, the design of the house is one large roof with dormers. The large roof is a 7 and 12 pitch. The dormers are 3 and 12 off of that. It's a bungalow style, so it has the large big roof coming all the way from the roof down to the first floor, and then you've got an eyebrow dormer, if you will, in the front of the building.
You said 312.
On the dormer, yes.
Jerry, if you're aware that those dormers need to be 5 on 12 to meet the ordinance requirements?
I was under the impression that the ordinance applied to the roof.
I will suggest to you that those dormers would need to be a 512 pitch. In light of the architecture of the house and the roof design of the remainder of the house, do you believe the 312 pitch versus the 512 pitch is warranted in this specific instance?
I do. This is part of the style of the house. It's a fairly typical style of the 20s and 30s, where you have a large continuous roof rather than doing a series of roofs at the third floor and again the second floor. It's one continuous roof. In order to get that form on the third floor, they typically are shallower dormers where the big roof is actually steeper.
And certainly in a location like this, I see the design of the house kind of carries it away in a gradual manner from the street, from massing on the street, and that softer pitch helps in that regard?
Yes, it minimizes the overall height of the house from the street because the roof line starts from the first floor eave and goes straight all the way up.
Kind of alleviating any massing on the street, particularly with those shallow two-story elements you have in front.
Yes.
Do you believe that the architecture, therefore, the aesthetic of that 312 pitch on the dormer is justified by way of variance to keep the design as is?
I do.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Mr. Burke, to the extent a roof pitch variance is necessary for the 312 pitch of the dormer, I would incorporate that testimony.
Okay, it is necessary.
It's going to be necessary.
I would add the question that curved roof on the front of the second floor, what would the pitch be if you extended straight lines on that?
It's a good question.
What?
It's probably about
I'm asking about the other one.
Probably the slope at the curve point is probably the 5 to 12, but it's a compound.
If you drew a straight line from the bend on each side to the peak,
Glad you're not the architect.
I'm reluctant to tell you
Listen.
something that's not true. Grade line is probably 8 or 12. Although I haven't calculated to give you a clean answer. It's intended as an eyebrow again, it's an eyebrow in the large roof. We've seen that done. Again, from the same period. It's going to be a main metal or flat seam metal roof on there, not shingles.
So we'll add that.
The eyebrow normally gives a nice aesthetic, some undulation, or otherwise it's a fairly soft slope.
Yeah. I mean, that's
Thank you, Jerry.
the one elevation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I got a question. What's the height of the house?
30 feet to the top peak.
Off 11?
Off the first floor? Off the first floor. First floor is elevated to 11, which is required reflection.
Right. What's the height of the first floor ceiling?
The first floor ceiling is 9, the other floor is 3.
Chris, I have just a simple question here.
We need drawings.
Because I'm a little confused. You're showing us that really nice rendering picture and everything, and yet it doesn't match the plan that you gave me to look at here. And I'm trying to, I'm just saying, if you look at them, I mean, this is showing windows up high.
The handout is what's on the board.
And look at it. It doesn't match.
Same house. Excuse me. We're on the record. Yes. Yeah. Use the microphone and make sure the court reporter can pick you up.
It just looks significantly different on the paper because all the windows are above the roof.
I'm sorry, what's your question?
If you look at this here,
Yes.
the rendering and
Yes.
how low that is, and then you look at that where the windows are hidden, it's just a matter of one doesn't match the other.
They do match. What you're seeing is, and perhaps this is clear.
Tom, I think they match.
If you look at the side, because the roof comes down on a slope, this is the dormer, and that's what you're seeing here. The dormer is just above the high point on the front arch. And this drawing here, which is what you see, is exactly what's in the rendering.
Tom, I think it might be the perspective, it might be the angle, the trees. To me, you're right. It looks as if this dormer, for instance, is not as large as it appears on your paper.
It's
And I think it's this perspective.
It's as good as we can get. The computer generates the flat plans. So I can tell you exactly that's built exactly the way the flat plans are built.
That's just an exhibit for tonight. I can put up.
That's fine.
If you were to make the first floor 8 feet, would that give you enough of play to change the pitch on the dormer to a 512?
It really doesn't, because what we're working with is the eave, which is actually lower than the 8 foot. The 8 foot on the house is not what's governing. It's the clearance at the front step where the eave comes out, because the eave comes out over the porch. It's taking the...
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
If you look at the side elevation, what governs is the whole slope as we come down to the porch, and that's at an 8-foot clearance. So that's what sets the slope plus the middle of the house to come to. The middle of the stair is where it comes from. That sets the peak of the house.
Thank you, Jerry.
Chairman asks what the purpose of the 512 pitch is, and that was created, I understand, years ago to avoid boxy masses, squarish masses. And there have been exceptions, and this is for you to decide tonight, because they've modified the application to include apparently 2 roofs that are not. I'd be curious to hear from the esteemed architect, Clem, his feeling about that. But it doesn't look like a boxy house to me. It looks like a very interesting facade to me. So, what are your thoughts?
Do we have any precedent relative to these curved roofs? What you mentioned, going from the low point to the high point with a straight line, is that our position on that?
That's the way we've been measuring it, yeah. We have a lot of precedent for less than 512 roof pitch variances. You've given them in other situations. Is this one of those situations? Have they convinced you? That's up to the board.
I'd like to make one observation on the eyebrow roof. It's not designed so much, but the wall at the face of that eyebrow has a lot of glass in it. And the eyebrow shape gives the minimum protection to that glass. Now, if anything I've learned in my 60-plus years of designing houses around here, you protect your northeast face. That glass is going to be subject to some 2- and 3-day gusters, got to leak sooner or later.
What are you talking about, Glenn, on the south elevation?
I'm giving an architectural aside.
Okay. And you're talking about the overhang here?
Yeah.
I'm talking about protection of that northeast-facing floor-to-ceiling glass.
The whole facade.
See? There is an overhang on this. If it were a straight peak dormer, it would have the same effect. The only way to get any more protection is to bring it down further. On a flat, you don't have enough room to do that properly and get a proper so there is an overhang between the wall and the eyebrow. The eyebrow extends about a foot over the wall, so there is at least that protection. It's not going to be complete protection.
Right. Yeah, that doesn't really have anything to do with it.
It's really not part of our...
Right, it's not part of the application.
I'm just mentioning it
Yeah.
from my experience, and I think some builders here on the board might agree with me.
Yeah, absolutely.
But what's your opinion about the 512 roofs?
I'm not happy about it.
No. Do you thoroughly understand your
He
plans?
needs to be sworn.
Hi,
He needs to be
Well,
sworn.
swear 'em in. You have to swear 'em in.
Walter first. I do.
I just have a
Mr. Cristaldi has a question for you with respect to, what I heard Mike say was, did you work closely with Mr. Roller, and do you understand?
Do you understand these plans?
As well as a layperson can understand them, we work very closely in designing, and particularly in designing that dormer.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure you understood with these plans.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Walter.
Thank you.
Anybody else from the board? Anybody from the public like to speak? Public portion is closed. Do you have anything else, Chris?
No, Mike, thank you very much.
Can I make a motion, we approve it, or do we have any conditions?
Sorry I missed that dormer variance.
The variance would include not only the combined side setbacks, but the roof pitch for the dormer. 5/12ths required, 3/12ths proposed, that's for the top dormer, and the eyebrow dormer, the testimony was it was somewhere between 3/12ths and 4/12ths when 5/12ths is required. Is that correct?
That's great. I'm just making a comment that I provided testimony with respect to justification for the variance. If you don't like the design, I don't think that's a reason to vote against the variance, which has been, I think, properly justified under the act. Everybody has personal taste about houses. That's all I got.
Right. I got one more question. At the front wall where the dormer is, what is the height of that front wall?
Sorry.
Okay, right to the dormer, not the eyebrow, now, all the way on the third floor.
Here, is this for an 85 question? Here?
What's the height from the floor to the ceiling of that 312 dormer?
The inside of the dormer is at 6'8".
6'8", okay, all right,
That's what sets the dormer.
right, okay. Okay, did somebody make a motion?
I did.
And somebody seconded it?
I'll second.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Go over the variances that we're voting on.
Plan is the
I'm
combined side
sorry.
yard setback.
Yeah, you're right.
312 here, 412 here.
Where does the 412 come from?
The eyebrow.
It's between 3/12ths and, the testimony was it was between 3/12ths and 4/12ths. So if you take a straight line from the peak down.
Oh, that's what I had asked Roger.
Right, that's what you asked him already. Those two pitch variances were tonight requested.
Okay,
So.
the only condition is I need revised plans. You have to show the actual elevation of the first floor. Other than that, we're okay. I'm okay.
Okay.
Tom Collins?
This is a very unusual application. neighborhood that the proposed property is going into is a really nice neighborhood. The property that's coming down needs to come down. We really can't change the land or the way the irregular lot sits. So, you know, I really think that that's a very de minimis in terms of a variance required. As far as what the first have done, I actually commend you. I think that we can't have everything 512 in a plain Jane Margate. We just can't do it. And everybody's heard me say this before. Variety is the spice of life. I think this fits perfectly into the neighborhood. It's not too much of a contrast or a clash with the stone house on the corner, which is gorgeous and should stay too. And I just think that you're introducing and bringing something nice into the neighborhood. So I vote in favor of it.
Clem Wasleski?
Well, I'm never happy with the lower roof slope, but I think Roger makes a good point that this total house being considered, perhaps it's not so bad. The eyebrow, you're just asking for trouble, and you're going to get it sooner or later. Again, we're not an architectural commission, so I'll vote yes.
Jim Galantino?
I have to commend Roger on a difficult front yard setback survey. It looked like a lot of the properties were non-conforming or conforming, and it looks like you got it right, Raj. I appreciate that, because we don't have a problem next time with another property. The property that's there now is a very large property, and it did take up a lot of the property, but it was only a one-story building. The property we're getting now is reduced the amount of coverage building-wise. As to the eyebrow, I think the builder is very competent. I see him sitting back there. That'll build a weatherproof type system around that window, and he'll stand on his word that it won't leak on a northeaster. And I don't see any detriment to any of the neighbors, and I don't see any neighbors here objecting, so I approve this application.
Mike Cristaldi?
I'm going to cut it short. I approve the application.
Pardon me?
Cut it short.
Craig Palmisano?
I agree with Jim Galantino's assessments. And it's a nice style house. I like the look of it. And from the front, it's not objectionable. From the side, it might be a little bit, but I'm okay with it. I approve it.
David Carter?
I approve the application, and I approve the change based on what's there and what's happening, and it kind of is different and goes into the area of other homes in that vicinity.
Michael Richmond?
Yeah, I think that the pitch variance is not nearly as egregious as trying to get a height variance, and I do think it fits in with the style of the property, so I'm going to vote yes.
Application passes 7-0.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Everybody okay? Anybody need a break? No? Are you in break? All right, 5 minutes? Yeah, we're going to take a 5-minute break.
Oh, jeez. I had 9 o'clock How to Get Away with Murder, 2 hours finale. I thought we'd make it.
I know, I was trying.
Jeez.
Okay, now you can show us.
Oh.
Thanks. He's great.
Jerry, thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris.
A little more gentle.
I thought you were losing your mind.
If we're marching up the door, she won.
Take a break or no? Take a short break.
Sorry, nobody told me that.
Can we get ready? I'd like to begin the meeting. Board members, be seated.
August. Okay.
Okay, let's go. All right, our next case is Harris Pogast, 7803 Bayshore Drive, Block 1004.02, Lot 9, in the S60 District to grant C variances for elevation of the new deck expansion area, side yard setbacks regarding the deck, and possibly others. Taxes and water are current, and proof of advertising and notifying is satisfied.
Roger Rubin? Yes. The subject property is an existing single-family home on an irregular bayfront lot with 75 feet of frontage, about 105 feet to the bulkhead, and an uplands area of 67 square feet. Presently, there is in the backyard a wooden deck at elevation 11.35 NGVD 1929, although to current ordinance, such decks may not be higher than 9.0. It is proposed via the plan of Ponzio Company and Associates to enlarge the deck as shown and construct within the enlarged deck, all at elevation 11.35, 1929, a swimming pool measuring 12 by 24 with attached spa. The proposed deck would be 5 feet from both side property lines and about 3 feet above grade. The variances required are the elevation of the deck within which is the pool. Per the ordinance, rear decks on the bay or canals can be built at no higher than 9.0, and the proposed is 11.35. This applies to any part of the proposed deck behind the house and as extended to the side property lines. And the other variance is the setback of the deck side piece on the right side. A very small portion of the deck, approximately 6 feet by 6 feet, is on the side of the house with steps going down to grade. This very small portion comes under a different standard. It has to meet principal building side setbacks of 10 feet and combined side setbacks of 22 feet, being only 5 and 10. Note that these are the variances required and not as set forth in the application package. Also, there is no pool setback variance as the left side 7 more than meets the new required 6, and there has never been a bulkhead setback requirement for pools. Comments. Site visits will inform as to view obstruction, noise, or privacy issues regarding houses to either side. In deliberating, consider that most of the deck could be at its location, but 2 feet 4 inches lower. It is that grade difference that you have to consider in terms of impacts. 2, per the new ordinance, the pool surround fence all the way up to the bulkhead must be 6 feet high from undisturbed grade of the applicant's land. The board may wish to consider conditions regarding view if that is an issue. Such conditions might relate to fence height or materials or design. No further conditions at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Rubin. Members of the board, my name is Chris Balance, and I represent Harris Pogast. Actually, was flying in for this. He's the owner of 7803 Bayshore Drive, identified on the tax map as block 1004.02 and lot 9. Yes, zone of Bayshore Drive, waterfront property. Mr. Pogast seeks to again expand his rear deck to include a pool. However, in this instance, we are preserving 5-foot setback on each side. Proposed deck will meet the elevation of the existing deck, and John Warner for the variance proposal would like to give you a little bit more detail.
John Barnhart? I do.
John, you prepared the variance plan and spoke with Mr. Pogast in preparation of this proposal.
We did, yes.
To explain it to the board and why we believe the variance in this instance should be done.
Sure. And I would like to say that we anticipated Clem's concerns on the side yard, but we just got lucky there, I think. So the proposal this evening is to take an existing deck, which is essentially up at the finished first floor of the single-family home that's on this property, and expand it within the side yards, as you see on the plan here, and then drop a pool and spa area into that newly created deck. The pool area and the spa area both comply to all your new pool ordinance requirements. All the setbacks are met. The deviation is the elevation of the deck and the setback of the deck into the side yards. We are proposing to maintain a minimum dimension from each of the side property lines of 5 feet. And one of the interesting things you have here, and it goes to how we don't really impact our neighbors or adjacent decks to our neighbors, is that you have the bulkhead line comes along this property and actually jumps out. So our neighbor's house is actually much further back than our house. And his deck is actually at a very similar elevation to the elevation of our client's deck. So the side where Mr. Pogus has chosen to put the pool, we believe will not have, and the deck elevation in the side yard will not have a negative impact on the neighbor. And on the opposite side, essentially what he's proposing to do, you can see his line angles here, so the deck actually does cut on an angle as it goes toward the water. What his proposal here is just to create the deck wide enough to allow stairs to come down into the side yard, and again, maintain a minimum 5-foot setback area.
John, at no time did Mr. Hogan suggest he was going to take out the property lines. The width of the deck really is to get access to the side yard from the deck.
Correct. I mean, what makes Mr. Pogus, he purchased the house and is trying to create a nice outdoor living space. So what he's trying to accomplish is a pool that's usable for his children, not just a little plunge pool, and then still have some exterior living space adjacent to it with the ability to get around the way that the rear of that home was constructed with the projection of the rear of the structure here. So it positions the pool basically because of the geometry of the house. And then Mr. Pogus, we discussed potentially going further, but he decided that this was the most appropriate layout to make certain that he does not create an issue with his neighbors.
And to make this, I believe, further justification is the configuration of the bulkhead at that location really helps to demonstrate that there really no impact on neighbors as a result of the elevation of the deck into the side yards.
Correct. As I had mentioned, this deck is out much further than our deck, and the deck adjacent to us on the side where the pool is actually at approximately the same elevation as ours.
Thank you. That's all I have, Mr. Richmond. If there's any questions, John can answer them.
I have one question for John.
Sure.
Just, my plan, it's hard for me to read, I guess I'm getting old here. What is the actual dimension from the pool to the high water mark or the edge of the bulkhead?
From the pool to the face of bulkhead, at its closest position is 3.4 feet.
Okay. And just point of interest, maybe to Roger or Stan, we changed the pool ordinance to 6 feet. We didn't specifically address bayfront, but I would assume, and maybe get an opinion from the board, that my opinion would be that in terms of waterfront, the bulkhead becomes the upland property line, and that should be the mark that we check for rear property, because you can't go out across the water and into the water. I'm not saying I'm against this,
That would
but...
be going forward only after tonight.
Well, that's depends.
It would have to
We're here to actually interpret, and we just change this, and we can say, you know, well, maybe we can't say. Can we say that upland
We've never
on a pool?
We've never
Doesn't matter what
considered,
we've never.
well,
We put that
it may
on-
not matter, but we never have considered the bulkhead to be a property line from which you have to be 10 feet back. We have numerous approvals where pools are right up to the bulkhead, within a couple of feet of the bulkhead. It's never been an issue. If you want to change it now, I'm just telling you, you would be breaking many years of precedent, many more than 10 years of precedent. And I don't know why you would do that.
So then
now.
maybe Chris is right, in case of, terms of tonight, it wouldn't pertain.
Yeah, we can't-
Maybe we should entertain at the end of this meeting recommending to the commissioners that we amend the waterfront properties for the 6-foot pool setback for the rear property lines to be the high water mark or the bulkhead.
Well, if what he's talking about, he's saying that he feels you should interpret the ordinance to mean that you have to be set 6 feet back from the bulkhead for the pool.
Such as you do from the side.
Right. I would say,
Point of the bulkhead.
you could, yeah. I've been calling it you have to use your microphone, to the outside of the bulkhead.
That's okay, no, if I...
Let me just, Tom, I don't think the board at this point should start considering little pieces of new legislation when we've just embarked on $150,000 of studies, as it turns out, with the Ponzio Company and Mazer Associates, to do a complete bayfront study of bulkheads, decks, all accessory uses, pools, elevations, grades, and that's going to be started any day now. And I think that should simply be a part of that study.
Roger, I agree with that, except to the point that all I'm saying is that maybe we should give a clarification, because this is a loophole. It's a loophole on the pool, and we were kind and generous enough, in my thinking, to reduce it from 10 foot to 6 foot. So to make that clarification right now, I don't think would make a big deal. It's up to what the board does.
Roger?
Tom, I would say this, and Roger, because of the precedents right now, I wouldn't give advice to interpret it in any different way tonight, but I do agree with you, there's a procedure to specify that, and we can change that, and we can have discussion on that. But I think the proper way to do that would be to let the board members know when that's going to be, so people can prepare for it. Maybe the studies are going to encompass some of this, I don't know. But I do think it's something that can be placed on the agenda at the appropriate time, if you would like that, as a board member.
Roger, didn't we say we could go right to the bulkhead with the pool?
We have done that.
We have done that, just in the
There's
past.
no limitation on the bulkhead.
Yeah.
On the setback from the
We went
bulkhead.
right to the bulkhead on a couple of them, didn't we?
Right.
Yeah.
John?
Yes.
That 3'4" from the edge of the pool, to what?
To the bulkhead.
To the outer face of the bulkhead, which is also the outer edge of the decking of...
Well, that's not the way it's drawn, that's why I'm asking the question.
Okay. You see the brown shade here? The brown shaded area?
You gotta be kidding.
Right where my finger is?
You better come over here and show me.
All right. wait a minute.
Sorry.
So that is the outer edge of the bulkhead right there.
Well, then what's this shaded area?
That's the bulkhead cap itself, so that, the inside
That's the
is...
interface of the bulkhead.
But that arrow is going to that point right there, and then it's going to there. So it's 3.4,
Does the deck go over top of the bulkhead?
correct. So you'll have
It's
3.
not shown that way. That's why I'm asking, is the shading?
Well, the shading, you're right, because they wanted to make sure that you see the bulkhead itself, but the decking itself would go right across the top. So you would have almost 3.5 foot of decking.
I was just afraid there was a difference in elevation between
No,
those two.
they're all the same.
Okay, now how about this step shown in here? Is that an old step that's going?
That is an old step that goes away, correct.
Okay.
Okay. Anybody else? Any other questions from the board? And anyone from the public like to speak? Okay, public portion is closed.
I'll make a motion.
I'm sorry, I
Go
had
ahead.
another question for John. John,
Yes.
is there a fence shown anywhere on this detail?
There is,
Or it's going to have a pool?
yeah, there is no fence shown. There's a fence, we have to install a fence. We have to install a fence per ordinance requirement.
You have to.
You have to have a fence.
Do you have to have it across the, just out of curiosity, you don't have to have it across the bulkhead, just on the sides? Okay.
And you have to have it up to the bulkhead, and then generally a fan over the corners, over the bulkhead.
Right.
To prevent someone from climbing around.
Right, okay.
And that's a more important question that I asked the board in my review to consider. Do you have any restrictions you would like to make on that fence in terms of possible view obstruction. Were you out there? Do you think a 6-foot fence would block views from any
Doors,
neighbors?
gates were locked, you couldn't get out there.
Get out there.
Really?
Yeah. I couldn't get out.
We were there. We made it.
Them and I did.
To the back.
I was out there this
The old guys didn't make
afternoon.
it.
Huh?
Both gates were locked.
Okay, anybody else?
I saw somebody tried to, I saw his footsteps today, and then they stopped in the fence.
Okay, do we have any,
It wasn't second.
who made the motion?
I made the motion.
All right, is second?
I'll second.
Okay. Any conditions or?
Well, yeah, the conditions, you have to show a fence of some kind and a revised plan. Yeah, thanks.
Tom Collins?
I'll vote in favor of the application. I think it's very de minimis. I don't think it's going to have any impact on the neighbors or the neighborhood. And I think if he can afford the pool when he's on the bay there, God love him, let him have it.
Clem Wozleski?
Can I ask one more question?
No.
No.
Just curiosity. John, what about the tie rods from the back pile? Is the pool going to hit them?
No, actually, the new bulk, it's a newer bulkhead, and they're the batter pile system, so.
They what?
Batter pile system.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm glad you got the side setbacks right this time. 5 foot like this minimum they should be. I don't see any problem with this. I vote yes.
Jim Galantino?
I don't see any detriment to the neighbors on this issue. I'm going to vote yes.
Mike Cristaldi?
As with the other board members, I also vote yes.
Craig Palmisano?
I'm in agreement with the other board members, also yes.
David Carter?
I vote yes.
Mike Richmond?
I don't see any problems with the neighbors, and I'm going to vote yes.
Application passes 7-0. Chris, would you please come and sign this? I don't have a copy of it, although I just got it signed tonight.
Okay.
Want to take a picture of it?
It was a much more pleasant experience tonight than last night.
Yeah, your move is a lot better.
Okay, Arnett?
Roger.
I think it is Roger. Okay. All right, let's go. Here we go. Last case. Okay, our last case is Jason and Linda, is it a?
Frazier?
Frazier, 102 North Washington Avenue, Unit 2, Block 327, Lot 102, in the C1 District to grant site plan action to determine compliance with the original site plan design. Taxes and water are current, and proof of advertising and notifying is satisfied.
Roger
Yes.
Rubin. I do. The subject property is the middle unit of a 3-unit condominium building at the corner of Washington and Winchester Avenue. The building sits on a lot 54 and a half feet along Winchester by 125 along Washington. Presently, at the second floor front of this unit, there is a small balcony which is set in from the front wall, projecting only about 1 foot toward the street from that front wall and having a closed railing, which is sided like the rest of the building. Per the plan submitted by architect Craig Dothe, the applicants wish to enlarge the deck so that it projects 4 feet forward of the front wall of the building and has an open glass railing system. The plan also shows construction specs as well as proposed drainage. This would visually match the Winchester Avenue deck at the corner unit, which was also designed by architect Dothe. The new owners of an adjacent unit, Mona and Larry Jaffe, having submitted a letter for the planning board file fully approving of the application by the Braziers, thus representing together 2/3 of the condo association and giving status to the application. In the course of recent months, there has been correspondence with the city and planning board solicitors in this case, and the appearance before this board is to act on the request in terms of a site plan modification. The action required is site plan. Basically, the board has to decide if the deck enlargement design conforms to the design as originally approved. There is no variance. The architect has, at my request, redone the front porch calculations, a copy of which is in the file, indicating the required front porch setback to be 11 feet 10 inches, and the deck is proposed to be beyond that at 13 feet 6 inches from the front property line. So it's 2 feet, almost 2 feet further away from the street than the requirement. Considerations: the board should look at the aesthetics of the porch design, its conformity with the overall building design and architecture, whether or not its mass and location change or conform to the overall original layout, and whether or not any view obstruction are created. Quality of life within the unit for the applicant may certainly be considered in terms of more space to occupy the outdoors, air and light, and possibly views. No conditions are suggested at this time.
Jason Brazier. B-R-A-J-E-R. I do. Yes, I'm Jason Brazier. I'm the owner of the property. And which, as Roger so eloquently said, I just want to simply expand the deck so that you can actually put a lounge chair out and use it as a deck. Right now, you basically can put a chair out there. We originally got the idea when we granted 100 North Washington, we also call it Unit 1, when they built out a deck on the Winchester Avenue side. And we thought it was a beautiful deck, and we thought we'd like to do something similar for us. As a middle unit, we don't have the side to do anything, so we engaged Craig Dothe, as stated, the original architect of the building and the architect for the other deck, to aesthetically make something that matches, that will work. Basically, it's going to come out. It's not going to go over any grass. As Roger said, no zoning variance. And we want to make it match exactly the other deck with the glass rail system. And I brought Craig to answer any questions.
Craig Dothe. I do. Pretty much, as everyone has discussed, when we originally designed the building, it got approval here at the board. And we made a modification to the corner unit, which was creation of a deck. There was no deck on that corner before. It turned out to be something right just like this. When we got the application approved at the board for this, everyone was very pleased on the look of the glass, the shape of it, looking back at the corner, that sort of thing. The whole thing was created to go back to the existing foundation system through these two fins, which is in keeping with the architecture, because all along the front facade of the building, looking down Washington Avenue, there's a series of fins, and what that does is it picks up this big cantilever and then brings it back to the pilings that are directly underneath the first floor. And it also adds to the architectural character. So what we did when we did the first deck that faces towards the beach is larger fins, and it picked up the cantilever to engage the actual deck itself. When we get to the center unit, this is a photo right here of the existing conditions, which, as Roger said in his report, it's a solid wall which is treated with the same type of finish, same type of siding as the balance of the building. Now, one of the things about this building that I think is there's a couple of things that are somewhat different than most of the buildings in Margate, and that is this aggressive roof line is one of them. The grouping of windows, in three different groupings, and then a couple of, just basic, punch-outs of the facade itself. But the facade is basically the backdrop for the glass and this aggressive roof line. So what happens is the whole concept of putting a deck back here behind a solid wall kind of like mutes the whole thing and doesn't really bring out the character of what it could look like. So basically what we did was take that wall down, and increase the size of that deck so that it now punches out from the building more. So it comes out square, and then what we do is we cut angles on either side so that it sort of in plan replicates the angles of the roof where you have these 45-degree angles on either side. Then we treat it with glass so that it looks really lightweight and exciting because it's kind of punching out, and it's almost like a jewel, like as this one is on the side. And then from a load standpoint, we bring it down and we make the fin that's underneath it, we make it, an aggressive fin, just like we did on the side. So we create an aesthetic enhancement that actually makes the whole building that much better. One of the things we made the front yard setback to the porch 13.6, even though we knew that we could have gone out another couple feet. The reason for that was because this particular deck sits right over and right next to the existing lawn. Now, if we went and projected over that existing lawn, we would be diminishing, even though the grass would still be there, we would be diminishing the front yard vegetated coverage, which, of course, would be a variance. So the idea was to do this variance-free. Just here it is. We're making, in my opinion, a vast improvement over what's presently there, and just making it look similar to what the board has already approved one time before, which is the deck on the corner. And I think it's a no-brainer, personally. I think it's a pure aesthetic enhancement, and that's the value of the project.
Board have any questions?
You may have mentioned at the beginning, and I missed it, the glass guarded balcony at the end. Was that part of the original construction, or did that come later?
No, that was done afterwards, and that required a variance, and that came in front of this board. So the original site plan came in front of this board and was approved. Then this deck, we designed this deck, and we came back in front of this board to get that variance, because the buildings right next door they're pushed so far back that the front yard setback along that road is crazy numbers.
What was in that location before you put the balcony on?
I didn't bother talking about that because I was trying to keep it brief. It was a solid wall like this that was decorated with a circle window, and it was sort of open at the bottom right back here, and then it has this bay window. Now the bay window stayed the same, the stacked bay. The wall itself stayed the same. We popped out this circle window, we put in a large slider, and then we built this deck across there, and it gave it more three-dimensional character, which I believe extending this one out does exactly the same thing. You're welcome.
Anybody else from the board? Anyone from the public like to speak? Nope. Public portion is closed.
Can I make a motion?
Jimmy, I'm sorry, before we make a motion, I'm Stan Bergman. Did I correspond with you?
Yes, you did.
Okay. Who was the neighbor, what's the name of the neighbor that first objected to this? Was there, just for the record?
Actually, both neighbors initially objected.
Just for the board to know what they're voting on.
That includes Craig Grossman, who I gave approval to build his deck, decided not to give me approval.
I understand.
And then the other corner unit, who also was in this board meeting and disapproved of the building next to us for some crazy reason, he also declined. Fortunately, both neighbors have moved, and the new
non-corner unit the Jaffees have given us approval.
All right, thank you.
We were talking, I was trying to get around the two-thirds
Right,
approval.
and you understand, like we talked about before, like I wrote, that this approval, whether they give it or not, if there's rules in the condominium that say you have to do it a certain way or there's certain design standards, this board can't override that. You understand that?
I still didn't fully understand why I'm here, but I understand that I have to be here, and I'll leave it at that.
Well, I think part of the reason that you were here is because we can't give an opinion whether you have to come here or not. I think your concern when we were discussing it was that there might be objections and you wanted to get some type of board review of that. Happens to not be any objections, obviously, but my concern was that I want to make sure that you understand that the condominium and the association and there's rules and regulations that we talked about, that doesn't have anything to do with what this board does.
I understand, but
they can approve this, and the condominium association can say, well, it's against the rules or against. You understand that, right?
Well,
that's a private interest.
Right, but before I even started the project, I did talk to a real estate attorney, and we've gone through that and felt I didn't need all those things, but that Margate wanted those things, and thus I now have those things. So I have allowed.
Well,
this
is just insurance for you. I understand. All right, thank you.
Stan, quick question then. Basically, we're giving an opinion as to it's acceptable to Margate zoning.
All we're doing is giving site plan approval based on our site plan standards.
We're not approving the
We don't
project.
approve,
We're
right.
approving the site plan.
Right.
So it's a yes or no vote?
It's a yes or no vote, yes.
Do you have to state a reason or no? No reason?
The motion, I would frame the motion in the affirmative that this application meets all the site plan standards of the city of Margate. And it'll be yes or no. Right.
No conditions.
No conditions.
Just a yes or no?
And just to clarify, again, okay, sorry.
Tom Collins,
Yes.
Clem Wozleski,
Yes.
Jim Galantino. Mike Cristaldi has recused himself. Craig Palmisano.
Yes.
David Carter.
Yes.
Despina Hess.
Yes, this meets all site plan standards of Margate.
Mike Richmond.
Yes.
The majority rules. We have 8 yeses and 0 nos.
Make a motion to close the meeting?
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, anything else?
I need that second,
Motion to close the meeting.
David.
Can I get a motion to close the meeting?
I'll make a motion to close the meeting.
I second it.
Done.
Last night.
Jason, I need your signature, please. Oh, thank God you made it to the end. Feel terrible like
Chris?
For me, do you think at least vote one no for me? He likes to go. Yeah, I say no.
It's 10. Jackie.
Now, you'll be home to get for your regular bedtime?
Yeah, go home, take a shower, go to bed, read my book.
I'll do a little reading first, but I mean, I would have been, I go up about 8:30, and I would have read, along about 9:30, I conk off. But I read every night. I take some. I'm not a book reader, but I lay hell with newspapers. So.
I read the press. I love books. I get hundreds of them, all military history.
Oh, is that right?
Everything I read.
Huh.
But I read Time, National G, and Smithsonian.
Okay.